Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee.
Good afternoon. Welcome to In Session. I'm your host, Dr. Farid Holakouee, and I'll be with you for the next 2 hours here on Radio Hamra. Studio number to call in, 310-441-0555. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, so you can call in with any questions related to clinical psychology, including any emotional, psychological issues, parenting issues, and relationship issues as well. You can also follow me on Twitter or Instagram, or like my page on Facebook to get updates on the show, or suggest topics or books for the program. The shows are uploaded at the end of each week to my SoundCloud page and podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Again, our studio number, 310-441-0555. I wanted to start the show today talking about an aspect or a distinction in communication when it comes to relationships, something that I've talked about before, but wanted to present in a slightly different way. So let me start it like this. There's a difference between saying something that upsets or hurts your partner and saying something to hurt your partner. So there's a difference between saying something that hurts your partner and a difference to something to hurt your partner. So when you talk about that means that you're saying something and your partner might not like it, or it might make them upset or momentarily hurt their feelings. But when you say you're saying something to hurt their feelings, that means your intention is to hurt them. Your intention is to cause damage. And the first one, the intention can be good when you say something that might hurt your partner. The intention can be good and actually beneficial to the relationship. The second one, when we say something to hurt our partner's feelings, that is with bad intentions and it damages the relationship. Now, this might seem obvious. I don't think anyone thinks it's good to say something to hurt your partner's feelings, although it's very common. It does happen. Sometimes when we get angry, even in a good relationship, you might say something in that moment because you want to hurt them, to hurt them. And unfortunately, in some relationships and people's relationship styles that are abusive or toxic or approach relationships in this way, they might intentionally want to harm their partner. And of course, this extends to all types of communication, but specifically, we can put a more of a magnifying glass looking at relationships or romantic relationships where there's more of the intimacy and more need to have this type of healthy communication and avoid the toxic types of communication. But the reason why I bring it up is because although no one would say I should say something to hurt my partner, because we think it's bad to hurt our partner, people avoid saying something that might hurt their partner, although it might actually help the relationship and build a healthier relationship. So because they think I should never hurt my partner, then I shouldn't say something if they won't like it. But that's a very, very bad and unhealthy mindset to have, because if we do that, that means we're going to avoid talking about the important and necessary issues that need to be addressed in order to maintain a relationship. And that word maintain to me is very important because a lot of times we look at relationships as this static thing. You find the right person, you get into a relationship and you get married, let's say, and that's it. You've made the relationship and it's done, as if it's something that's just now frozen in time. But we have to look at a relationship as a living thing that requires time and attention, and in that sense needs to be maintained and also can be built upon and grown and should be growing during the course of your relationship. So rather than seeing it as something frozen, we need to see the relationship as something living, and anything that's living needs time and attention and love to keep going and to stay strong. So you can imagine two partners and one of them is feeling upset about something, let's say the partner said, or feeling unhappy in the relationship. And they reflect and they think, okay, I'm not feeling good. They get in touch with that feeling. But you know what? I think it's going to make my partner feel sad if I bring it up. So, because I shouldn't say anything that ever hurts my partner, that's being a good partner, is not hurting them, I shouldn't say anything. And this is where the distinction is very important. You have to ask yourself, is my intention to hurt my partner? I just want to insult them or put them down. Or am I thinking of saying something that might hurt my partner, but I think it's actually with good intentions towards helping me feel better, helping them learn about what I'm feeling, and then also, very importantly, helping our relationship to grow together, and also make sure we don't grow apart, because that is what happens when we avoid talking about these issues. So here it brings up another distinction that you've maybe heard me talk about before when we talk about pain and discomfort. And I use this a lot actually with parenting, because I think it's very important in how parents approach their kids. But determining or distinguishing between pain that is damage and pain that leads to growth. And the analogy I often use is when we look at working out or exercise. So when you're working out, we say no pain, no gain, and that's very true. In order to get benefits from working out, in order to build muscle and to get healthier, you need to push yourself out of your comfort zone and embrace some level of pain or discomfort. I think Muhammad Ali had some kind of quote like, I only start counting when it starts to hurt, because that's when it counts. So if you don't face some type of pain or discomfort, if you say I'm going to lift weights, but as soon as it hurts a little bit, I'm going to stop, you're never going to build any muscle or really develop anything in your health. So you need to embrace that pain. However, you also have to be aware that there's some pain that's damage. You could be, for example, tearing the muscle. When you're building muscle, there are these microscopic tears that happen. But if you are pushing it too much, you could strain and even pull or tear a muscle in a very unhealthy way that's damaging. Or you can damage ligaments, or your knees, your elbows, tendons, ligaments, things like that. That is pain that is damage, not pain that is growth. So we always have to make this distinction also with ourselves, but with our relationships. Is this pain leading to damage or an indication of damage, or is this pain an indication of growth? Because unfortunately, I've also worked with people, or you see people talk about their relationships, and they sometimes think, well, it's hurting because this is a good relationship, and really intense, passionate relationships, they should hurt. And yes, there's going to be pain and discomfort, and a relationship is going to give you ups and downs, and almost always is going to pull and poke at some of your deepest issues and insecurities. That is going to happen. But an unhealthy, toxic relationship, or one that involves disrespect, violence, aggression, is never a healthy thing, and not at all an indication of healthy or strong love or passionate love. It's a sign that you are bonding with someone over your dysfunction. So the dysfunction is running the show, not the healthy, functional part of what you would hope would be the foundation of your relationship. And the issues are also there, but the foundation is something healthy. So we have to be aware that just because love is hurting doesn't mean it's a healthy or strong love. Some people have experienced only love that involved a lot of pain, whether it was through physical abuse, emotional abuse, constant chaos and arguments and disagreements, that it's hard for them to understand love without pain. So we have to always look at our own foundational relationships with our parents within our home, the marriage that they had together, because that's going to form the foundation of what we tend to think is going to make a healthy relationship, or is going to be what we expect in love, or we don't know if we're feeling love until we feel that pain, unfortunately. So we have to be very aware of that. But coming back to the person who has this feeling that comes up, so if they just think I should never hurt my partner, then they think or say something my partner doesn't like. Then if they are upset or hurt in the relationship, their first reaction is maybe they think something, they think, oh, you know what, I shouldn't bring it up. And they hold it in. And unfortunately, I work with couples who have held things in for too long. And rather than this preventing hurting your partner being good, it's led to a few things. One is it leads to building up of resentment, because if you don't share those feelings, they don't go away. And oftentimes, if you don't share those feelings, it's about something that's ongoing in the relationship, and the issues just become worse and more ingrained in the relationship, and the resentment is just going to build. And so because of that, and related to that, when you don't share what's going on, you're also going to create more distance between each other. So as I mentioned, the relationship can grow and you can grow together, but sadly, you can also grow apart. And so if I'm not sharing with you what's bothering me, what I'm going to learn to do is avoid you more or get less close to you, or there's going to be a lack of a possibility of closeness if I'm not sharing with you what is making me upset or what's hurting me in the relationship. So in that moment, it might seem like I have a choice of either saying something that might hurt or upset my partner or not. If we look at it just that way, kind of binary black and white, well, then it can seem like, well, of course I shouldn't hurt my partner. And that's why it's important to make that distinction. Am I saying something to hurt my partner intentionally to cause harm? Or am I saying something that might hurt my partner, but can be beneficial and important for me, for my partner, and for our relationship? Even in therapy, I've sometimes worked with couples and let them know when I'm encouraging you to share these things with your partner, it's not because you want to hurt them or you want them to feel bad. It's actually because you love them so much that you are saying something to them. I love you so much and I love our relationship so much that I want to share this with you. So my intention is not to hurt you, to make you feel bad, to damage our relationship. My intention is actually the opposite of all of that. Because I love you, care about our relationship, and want it to be good and strong, that I'm saying something. So this might seem obvious, but in the moment, we're almost always going to be drawn towards the easier option. We want to say something, but we think it could be awkward or uncomfortable, and so we hold it in. And the same thing is true about the recipient. You're enjoying your day, everything seems okay to you, and now your partner brings up something that's a little bit uncomfortable, might even feel annoying, might be something they're saying you're not doing, so you might even feel insulted or criticized in some way, which doesn't feel good. So the recipient also can have a similar type of reaction, or the other side of that reaction of, why are you hurting me? Why are you attacking me? Why are you making me feel bad? And so we have to be open as the recipient of that, or as members of a partnership, that we're going to have to say, and we want our partner to tell us if we are hurting them. Imagine if you're holding your partner's hand, but you don't know that the part of their hand you're holding onto tight is actually very sore or bruised, so it's hurting them. Now, they could either tell you, the way you're holding my hand hurts because of this part of my hand is bruised, but because they don't want to upset you, maybe they'll think I shouldn't say anything. Would you want them to continue being hurt by you, even if you're doing it unintentionally? Would you want them to continue to be hurt by you, or would you want to be told, even if it's uncomfortable or means you have to change something or means you might have to look at what you're doing and recognize that there is some pain you're causing your partner? I would hope that it's very obvious that although you don't want to hurt them and you don't want to face what's going on, you'd rather know. It's the same thing I deal with parents when at times they don't give space to their child to share their negative feelings. I say, look, if your child had a really bad cold and was in their room, would you want them to hide their cold from you and not tell you and not let you help them? Or would you want them to tell you? So of course you don't want them to be sick, but if they are, you should want to know and you will want to know. Similarly, in a relationship, if your partner is hurt, you don't want them to be upset or sad or disappointed in you or hurt by something you did, but I would hope that you would want to know if that is the case. And you should also recognize that no matter what, if you're dealing with a relationship of any length of time, you're going to do things that upset them. You're not perfect, and not only it's not even about being perfect, but we have different ways of relating, communicating, things come up, we have bad days, where of course, if I ask you in the last 5 years, do you think you've done something that hurt your partner, and you think no, you're really out of touch with reality and what's actually going on. Of course you've done some things, unintentionally hopefully, that have hurt your partner. So we should really think, okay, if I've definitely done something my partner doesn't like, I would think I would want to know rather than not know it. So I want my partner to tell me. I want them to let me know if I've hurt them or upset them in some way, rather than to be ignorant of it or think they need to hold it inside. And especially because I've hurt them, I'd want to know, but I definitely want to know to understand it, resolve it, and to make sure I don't keep doing those things. So as the recipient, we will hopefully create the mindset that it might be annoying in the moment, it might not feel as good as hearing something nice or not hearing something at all when it comes to these types of things, but that I want to embrace this and recognize this as part of maintaining, building, creating, and continue to grow a healthy relationship with my partner. Might not feel good in the moment, but like anything that involves growth, sometimes it doesn't feel good to get to that place. And of course, as the person sharing what we're saying, you can't just say, well, my intention is good, I can say it however I want. How we express it, it doesn't mean that now that I'm saying it's okay that it might hurt or upset your partner, you can say it in any way that hurts. You want to minimize the way you hurt them, or you want to be aware not to hurt them more than is necessary. So you want to be genuine and open, but at the same time be aware that there's kindness in how you share even what you're upset about with your partner. I think sometimes we feel this need that I have to show a threshold has been met that is worthy for me to share it, so we get even more angry. Oh, what you're doing is so bad, look how bad it is, because we have to prove it's worth bringing up. But if we actually recognize the threshold is lower, that we always want to share, and you don't have to prove that it's so worth it or such a big deal, that makes it a lot easier for you to share it with kindness and love, that you're unhappy or upset about something or hurt by something. And even the intention shouldn't be to blame your partner, because sometimes it's something we're sensitive about, something our partner might not be aware of. Hopefully we'll have the mindset that my partner has good intentions, doesn't want to hurt me. And because of that, we can approach it as, okay, my partner did something they didn't realize hurt me, and I want to bring it to their attention. So again, the key distinction is it's good and can be actually very healthy to say something that might hurt your partner, and that's very different from the unhealthy of saying something to hurt your partner. Let's go to our first commercial break. Studio number 310-441-0555. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's go to a caller. Radio Hamra, you're on the air. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, hi. Thanks for calling.
Hello there. We spoke last week, if you remember.
Oh, that's right, yes.
Where we didn't have enough time to... Wait, sorry.
Yeah. Speak for myself, and also for anyone who wasn't listening last time, it might be good to give a little recap of your situation, but then we can dive back into it.
Yeah, of course. So, I'm 19 right now, and I live in the UK, and I was born in Iran, and I moved to the UK when I was around 12. So I've been studying here, and obviously I know the Persian language as well, and as well as I was brought up with the culture of Iran, but I was in the UK culture, so I learned that as well. Currently, I'm applying to go to university and stuff, and it's just a question about myself and how to better myself. What kind of courses I could do, to take, to be able to learn about, my emotional side, because I know there's different types of courses you can take and stuff, and also about my relationship with my current girlfriend, who is Indian but was born in the UK. Yeah,
that's right. I remember that was one of the last things I think you brought up, that your father was not in favor because you're saying there's a cultural difference, and we got into it a little bit, talking about it a little bit about how for me, culture is very important, or just in general matching, but culture just as a label of Indian, Iranian, American, or whatever it might be, is not as important of how the person is, because the label is less important than actually who you are culturally and your values and different things like that. So to me, it wouldn't be a reason for you and her not to be together, but it is something to look at and be aware of. Are there some differences because of culture and other issues that could be a problem? But to me, the labels itself are just right off the bat, that wouldn't make it so you should not be together.
Right. What about religion? Because she's a Hindu, and obviously as an identity, I'm a Muslim, but we're both not the very practicing type, so but I still follow the guidelines. For example, I don't know, not to eat pork, don't touch alcohol. But for example, she's not allowed to eat beef, but she drinks alcohol and stuff like that. So it's just these small things, like, will that ever work? Because if a kid is brought into this, and obviously I'm not trying to think about that in the future, like, good, but if I stay with this girl,
Mm-hmm.
it could be a chance it will go on, and it's just, well,
Well, of course,
sure
it
before I do that.
definitely can be an issue. So it's not to say that because it's like you don't eat pork and she doesn't eat beef, like it will or won't be an issue. These things are really important. As you said, you're both maybe not practicing so much, but you do practice some, or you don't consider yourself very religious, but you practice some of the rules and laws of the religions.
Exactly.
These things can have an impact on how we see things. So, for example, maybe you don't consider yourself very religious, but you have to be aware of, let's say, where not drinking alcohol probably was, or drinking alcohol was looked at in a negative way, or might have had negative value in your family. Now, how much you've internalized that is something for you to look at. Could affect how you see her drinking. Even, maybe consciously, like, oh, I think it's okay. People drink. I know it's common. I can accept it. But it could emotionally make you feel something because from a young age you've heard something or seen it as a bad thing or impure or, whatever it might be. So that's what I would want you to look at, not just, well, is this itself an issue? But it's at how much do I feel about these things really in an honest way? And then, when you get older and getting married and then possibly having kids, those issues can come up that people might realize they didn't realize they cared as much as they thought they did about certain issues, because it starts to become more emotional rather than when you just think about it, it's very logical and just, who cares? I don't think religion is important, so I'm not going to care when my kids come. And then, they wake up one day and realize they're having fights about something they never thought they would fight about.
Yeah, of course. And just for example, right now, like because obviously around my life right now, a lot of my friends drink, the girlfriend drinks. It's like people drink all the time, so it's kind of normal for me to see, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with it doing it, but at the same time, it's like this inside me. There's this little thing. It's like when my girlfriend goes out drinking or so, I just go like, well, why? It's like, even though I'm totally like, if she says I'm going to town, I'm going to be like, well, I'm not going to have a go at her or anything. I'm not going to have a fight with her to not go. It's just up to her. It's her choice. I mean, but at the same time, I've got this little inside me. It's like, well, come on, what are you doing? Don't do it. What if she goes and drinks so much that she ends up cheating? Obviously, these are insecurities inside myself, and obviously, they might not show it in day-to-day life, but it's still there. So how can I counter these or tackle them, or just because I don't want them to be inside me forever. If that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I think we wouldn't want them to be inside you forever, but the first thing is really trying to understand them and being aware of what they are, where they're coming from, and you might be able to, over time, have them become less or change them. But we can't just think, okay, it's something, and I don't think I need to feel this way, so let me make it go away. These are genuine feelings that are coming up, and seems like, as is often the case, lots of different issues can blend together. So there does seem to be something you don't like about drinking, even though you're saying you're okay with it, seeing your friends and people doing it. So, but there's something you don't like, and then on top of that, it brings up these insecurities or these issues related to cheating or infidelity that also concern you. But the way you're saying it, it's like you're maybe okay with it. Even that might be hard to totally say, but you would much rather she did not drink.
Exactly. It's like, just don't put yourself in that situation for it to ever happen. But at the same time, I've been reading online for different psychology forums and stuff, and it's been saying, well, sometimes you just gotta either stay or you gotta leave if you're not having a good time. But the thing is, though, it's a bit hard here because I'm having a great time. We're both having a great time, and there's no I'm not seeing any signs of any unfaithfulness or anything like that. But it's just that still comes back. And I'm wondering, maybe it's because I remember you said last week, because my issue with my mother, who left when I was 4 because of the divorce.
That's right.
Because me and my dad, they didn't really match at all in any sense. So that's why, because I asked my dad, I was like, well, what was the actual reason? And that's what it was. They didn't match in any way, and there were always fights and just differences, so they decided to divorce. And then you said to me, maybe I could have brought those emotions of being insecure about women and their unfaithfulness and stuff like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I remember, and I'm glad you mentioned that again as far as reminding me, but it's a very unfortunate thing you had to experience, that we would almost have to expect that it's going to have an impact on how you can feel about yourself, but especially about women and relationships, and especially in the context of them staying or sticking around because of what you went through. So your parents not being a match, that can be a very reasonable cause for divorce, but then her not being in your life, I don't obviously know the details, and it seems like you might not know all of them either, but that was definitely not fair to you or okay, and that could definitely lead to things that you feel. Now, when I hear the story, of course, I think, what was your mom doing, and the responsibility is on her that she left. But unfortunately, as a kid, a lot of times we internalize this feeling that something about me made this happen, or also I should expect this can happen again with women in my life. There could be those expectations that you might have that are not always going to be there. So it doesn't mean every moment that's how you're thinking, and you might be with your girlfriend and things are great, but then it gets triggered in these moments, when she's maybe going out or something, that's when it triggers these insecurities or these fears start to come up, and that could be definitely difficult, obviously, for you to deal with, and it's hard to say, well, should you, obviously it's easy to say either leave or stay, that's true, but it's more complicated than that, because you probably want to work on these issues regardless. It doesn't matter to me if you stay with her or not. You would want to look at these issues of what's happened in your past and how they might impact you, but you're also in a relationship now, so it's not like you can just press pause, work on it, and come back, and so you have to figure out what to do now as well.
So, and then it's just, another thing is, though, because obviously that's why I've called, and I was like, well, should I break this off now because of this kid issue in the future, or should I just put my foot down and just continue and just try to work it best? That's my stuck here. But of course, my dad's saying at the same time, he's like, well, for example, he said I could do better in terms of looks. He was like, well, it's hard to say. It's very hard for me to say this right now. But he said, he was like, well, you are much better in the physical, like looks than she might be. So it's like you could do better and stuff. And I'm just like, well, I'm confused here. Like, what should I do? Because at the same time, I know your father had said in one of his podcasts about Indian and Iranian relationships should just not happen at all. At the same time, it's like, well, could there be a chance it could happen? Or because I've seen some good stories, but at the same time,
I don't know.
So there's a lot of different emotions.
Yeah, there's a lot of different emotions. You're hearing a lot of things, and at the end, whatever anyone says, we want you to make the decision for yourself, and it can make sense to talk to people and consult and get some insights, but you're going to know what's best for yourself at the end and have to make that decision. I don't know. You mentioned something my father said specifically about that. I don't know if he ever did say that exactly, and I'm not sure about that. I definitely would not make that type of a conclusion about two cultures just cannot be together. And again, culture is not this kind of black and white binary thing that you're Persian or you're Indian or you're English or you're American, because, for example, myself, I'm Iranian as far as background goes in my parents, but I was born and raised in the United States, so I'm very different from someone who currently lives in Iran or moved to Iran moved to the U.S. A year ago. Culturally, you can't say, well, it's just we're the same culture. Absolutely not. We're very different culturally. Culture is a multifaceted thing. It's not this thing that we can just simplify into labels. So I would never say two people from any two backgrounds cannot be together. To me, that would never be a place to start. In general, we want there to be similarity. That's very important. Now, going back, even you said it's hard to say what your father has said about looks and that you can do better and comparing you and her. I could see how you don't like to hear that, and I think your father, it sounds to me, is getting too involved in pushing you away from this relationship and definitely making it very clear that he thinks you shouldn't be with her from the cultural. Now he's saying the looks, and who knows if that's really something or it's more the cultural or he's worried about something. But I think what I'm hearing is he's pushing too hard, pushing you away from her. And I don't even know if this relationship is good or healthy for you and the right one, but I wouldn't want you to feel this push from him that's so strong away from her, and also kind of almost insulting her or putting her down in some ways with what he's saying. I doubt that feels good for you. As you were saying, it's hard to even say it.
She currently doesn't know that my father knows about our relationship.
Okay.
I've never told her that my father knows. I just said, I haven't talked about that. So
What's kept you from telling him?
I think it's just a matter of like just I was like, well, if I just don't tell her right now, so it's just she wouldn't try to come into this life, and then my father's seeing, and then because then it'll be too serious. Because I want to find out first before I even take that step.
Okay.
Of getting more serious. Just another thing that my father said is when I went over to her house and let's say slept over for like 2 days, he would say, "Yeah, you're staying too much. Why would you even stay? At the end of the night, if you guys are not, you guys are not partners. She should be treated as a girlfriend, not like a married couple. Because why are you staying over? You should come back home and sleep here." It's like I understand what he means by that in a sense, but at the same time, like I'm 20 now. So it's like,
yeah, and these things are not black. He's presenting things very black and white about everything. I mean, boyfriend and girlfriend spend the night. People that aren't even in a relationship spend the night. I mean, it's not something where he can say this is like some rule you violated. But he's trying to make it seem very black and white and telling you this is how it should be. And this is how it shouldn't be. And I think that's going to make it even harder for you, because the most important thing for me is for you to make the decision, not just because you're going to definitely make the best decision, I don't know, but you have to make it because then you have to continue making the decisions in your life. Even if you let your dad pick your partner for you, and even if he picks the right person, now you have to create a relationship with them that you have to make 1,000 decisions to make it work and see how things go. So it seems like he's really, you're a little bit confused, but on top of that, I think your dad is making you feel like you should undermine your own ability to make a decision, and that's also making it challenging for you to figure things out, because he's basically telling you you don't know what you're thinking, like this is all wrong, or so many things you're doing is wrong. So that's not going to help you make your own decision, because we know how he feels. He would like for you to break up with her as soon as possible, it seems, but you obviously are not that clear on that. So look, we're at a commercial break, and I'm glad I got to speak earlier with you so we can go a little bit deeper into things, but let's chat a bit more after the break, okay?
All right, no worries. Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Before the break, we were with the caller. Let's go back to him now. Caller, are you still there?
Hello? Yeah.
Hello. Okay. So we're talking about some things you're currently going through. You have a girlfriend, a little bit unsure about some things yourself, but then also it seems like you're getting some pretty strong pressure from your father that he thinks it's not the right relationship. So, and you said your girlfriend doesn't know that your dad knows, but her family knows about you.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
She's spoken to her mother and told her father. First, I mean, when they heard that I was Persian, they were a bit taken back, and they were like, "Well, why don't you just date an Indian guy?" And then she was like, "Well, I'm 19 now. I want to date whoever I want. I like this guy." And, all of that stuff pretty much was told. And finally, apparently now, the mother is on the good side, I think. She's accepted it, because, she has talked about me and, like, the things I do. I don't know, my education, I don't know, my financial, I guess, where I am, or what kind of person I am, and stuff like that. And what I've noticed thing is, though, in this relationship, I think I've helped her more, like, with influencing, just getting her better than she has helped me. But I'm not sure if that's normal, or should it be two-sided 50-50? Like, as in experience-wise in life, I feel like I knew more. I'm not trying to, like, brag about myself or, say I'm higher than her. Not at all. Because, she's different. She's better than me in different things than I am. At the same time, I feel like just knowing a way around in independence, I've just been better at it than her. So I've helped her out. That's one thing my dad noticed. And he was like, well, what has she helped you with? Because I see you helping her with, like, everything, just trying to get her life around, stuff like that. And I was like, well, I don't know.
Well, we can talk about that. Things are not going to necessarily be 50-50, and we don't want to even keep track to that extent. At the same time, there has to be some level of balance. So it's not that we make it exactly, okay, I helped you with this, you helped me with that. It's exactly equal, but we don't want to enter a relationship that is very one-sided, or, and that can be unhealthy. So tell me a bit about the dynamic you're saying of you helping her with her life, what's going on, what was it that she needed help with? Tell me a bit about that.
it's just, for example, I don't know, her wanting to, for example, get fitter, or her just like not knowing her way around, I don't know, getting an appointment somewhere sometimes, or just getting confused. It's just me having a car, for example, to being able to provide that kind of stuff. In that sort of sense, it might not sound like much, but that's what my dad noticed, and that's what he said. I was like, well, okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
I haven't noticed it.
no. So now, not to discount everything your dad says, 'cause I'm sure he's making a lot of points that can matter, but we have to not just listen to it too much. And I want to ask you about it, like how you feel in the relationship, because it does look like, look, your dad's going to find any reason to say you shouldn't be with her. You know, she wore a green shirt and green is bad because we should wear yellow or something. You know, he just looks like he's going to find
Right,
something.
yeah.
And there could be legitimate reasons, but it's just very clear he's trying to push you away from her. But in your relationship with her, what do you think? Do you feel like it's one-sided? Do you feel like you help her and support her and she does not support you in any kind of way, or doesn't support you a lot?
To be totally honest, no, I think it's actually quite good. I think it's just I've got this drilled into my head that maybe that could be it. To be fair, I'm actually having an alright time here because, like, she's more connected with her emotional side than I am. So if I like get stressed, she'll try to get it out of me. Like, okay, what is it? I'm like, I don't know. I can't really tell. But she'll talk to me and try to get her, ways of just getting myself to talk and getting rid of that emotion. For example. And she's done a lot for me. For example, after my birthday, she's done a hell of a lot more than I did for hers. Like that kind of thing. Like emotional side, she's more connected.
Yeah,
so
and
it is helping me. Actually understand how, I don't know, women are, girls are, how they act, how they are. So in that sense, I'm having a good time. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's very important what you shared, and that's the thing, is that it's not some okay, you helped her exercise 4 times. Has she made you work out more? You don't want to make it so transactional. People give love and support in different ways, and as I said, it's more important about how you feel. If it's like balanced and it's not one-sided. Sometimes people enter relationships and they're constantly giving more than the other person for lots of different reasons, and so that's not healthy. But if you're saying it feels more balanced, or you actually recognize she gives you lots of support that you value in emotional ways, that maybe it's challenging for you and she's actually helping you deal with things better, that can be very important and very valuable, and not something I would undermine or say is not important. So you do feel like you're supported by her, or you get from her. Okay.
We've obviously had fights and stuff.
Sure.
Had arguments in the past, and we always talked about it, but we always overcame it, and we got stronger. Like the more we had fights or arguments or just different things, like I don't know, one thing I didn't like about her, one thing she didn't like about me, we got closer.
Yeah. Well, that's very true. And that's very if arguments are dealt with in a healthy way, they actually do lead to the relationship getting stronger rather than getting weaker. The first segment I was in a way talking about this issue, that if we hold things in when they bother us in a relationship, it actually makes things worse. If we share them in a constructive way, it actually can make the relationship stronger. So that's good.
Yeah.
So clearly, any relationship, there's going to be some good and bad. So some things we just talked about were some of the good. Earlier, you yourself shared some of your own concerns. Of course, your father either brought them up too or amplified them, but just some of your own concerns about the culture and religion, and some insecurities that might be triggered when she drinks, let's say, or goes out without you and is drinking. So these are all things to look at. But for me, what's important is that you're evaluating the relationship yourself. So another factor in your relationship with her is families. And from your side, we've talked about your father, but you also mentioned her parents, and initially they both wanted her to date an Indian. You're saying her mom has come around a little bit more, but still that is a factor that you have to look at, not because you and her should do what your parents want. So when I talk to parents, I tell them not to get involved and give their kids the space to make their decisions. But it can be an additional challenge of, if you are, let's say, meeting each other's families and parents, or connecting the families, and if they're not for the relationship, it can be an additional burden that you also have to look at when you're trying to see how good this relationship is or how likely it is to continue. So that's something to look at and be aware of. But what I'm concerned of is how much it seems like your father is pushing you away from her and not letting you evaluate what's going on.
That's the thing I was going to go on to next, actually, about that. Because one of her things that she has an issue with me is, but it's gotten a lot better, is that she was like, well, I feel like you don't want to see me sometimes because I barely see you. Because she looks at, like, her other friends who are couples, and she says, well, I can't be blamed to be a little jealous because they see their boyfriends, I don't know, like 4 times a week, for example, 3 times a week. But I'm seeing mine once a week or once every 2 weeks sometimes. And that's just my part. I mean, not because it's just mainly my father. I am obviously busy with work and studying at the same time, because I have told her, and she agreed with me, and she said it's the same, that career comes first currently, because we're young, and we need to get that out of, sorted, career, education, and stuff like that. So in that sense, like, we're normally busy. But I think sometimes my father's like, oh, don't go out, like, why you keep going out for too much? So sometimes I just say to her, yeah, I can't come out. I don't know, my dad needs me or something like that. So it is a bit of a lie.
Yeah.
I don't really like lying, if that makes sense. I mean, it's not really a nice feeling. I don't want to be lied to, so I don't want to lie to someone else.
And we don't want you to do that. Yeah, we definitely don't want you to do that in any relationship, and it's just not good for the relationship and creates distance and even mistrust. If in some way she does find out you were lying to her, and you're even the things you were saying it to me in a very way that made it seem like it's what you really felt, like, well, work is first and things like that. But it seems like that's not the reason you're seeing her less than she wants. Maybe sometimes, but it's less about that and more a pressure from your father. So tell me what happens. You're saying, okay, I'm going to go meet up with her, and he says, no, you shouldn't, or what ends up happening?
Sometimes, countless times I've gotten in a fight with my father. It's not been physical. I mean, I have been beat before, and not once, but many times. And obviously my dad has always cried about it afterwards and said, he shouldn't do it and stuff. And he has his own things.
Just so I'm clear, you're saying your father has beat you before?
Yes.
I'm sorry to hear that. When was the last time?
It's been, I think, a good few months, like 8 months, 9 months.
Oh, so that's not that
long. I've gotten used to it that I feel sometimes numb about it. When we have a fight now, I feel numbness, because back then I used to feel, I don't know, either I got angry, for example, at him for like fighting, or I got scared, or I felt unhappy, or just stressed. But now it just feels like a regular routine. It's like, here we go again. Let's have another fight every 2 weeks about one thing.
Yeah, that's not
obviously
good.
Some of the things is So.
I mean, I didn't mean to cut you off there. In a way, I did, but I was just thinking. You said you're getting numb. Getting numb means that feeling in this relationship or in this situation with him, it's too painful, so it's easier to be numb. But that's a really sad sign. To feel is too painful, which makes sense if it's physical and emotionally abusive, or at least physically abusive, and then these fights are happening regularly. It seems like you've learned to numb, and that's not going to be good in general with dealing with relationships and things, because you might get good at something that we don't want you to get good at, which is kind of distancing yourself from what you feel and you're going through. And so you might not even realize, let's say, you're upset or unhappy or don't like something, because you've gotten used to numbing yourself to make a relationship work. Mm-hmm. And so that really does concern me. So I would hope your dad, rather than worrying so much about your relationship with this girl, would worry about his relationship with you, because it seems that's the one that needs a lot of work.
Yeah, no. I mean, he's the one that really suggested me talking to you.
Okay.
And, listening to your father's podcast and stuff like that. So it's not like he's been a bad father.
No, I'm not trying to say he's a bad father. At all.
I know. It's just, but at the same time, it's like one of our frequent fights is that he is stressed over me forgetting my language. Because I came here at 11 years old, and I had to quickly learn English in school. But at the same time, my Farsi skills deteriorated a bit. because I wasn't speaking in English. The only time I
Yeah.
was speaking was at home with him. So now writing and reading is a bit like slow. It's a bit run down, a bit. It's like rusty.
Yeah.
And he tells me every day at least, try to watch one episode of an Iranian series, or try to come read a book to me. But sometimes I get too, I don't know. Sometimes I just don't want to do it. It's not out of spite or anything. It's just.
No, I mean,
It's just boring because every time I try to do it, I get yawning, and it's just it's like.
well, I mean, I
it feels
do.
like I'm being forced to do it.
Yeah, and so let me make it clear again that in no way is my intention to say he's a bad father or to just criticize him to criticize,
no.
but to look at the relationship with you and what might be healthy and not healthy, and even with that, there's a controlling side, and especially because you moved there when you were 11. I would want you to even make sure your language, it seems obviously speaking to you, your English is quite good and there's no problems there, but you need English to survive where you are, and I wouldn't be so concerned about you losing the Persian language. Maybe that's also because I can't read and write very well myself, but in Persian, but it does seem like from what you're describing and the way you're talking about things, there's a lot of controlling elements in your relationship with him. It could be that partially from a young age he had to take care of you all by himself, so he really wants to protect you and try to make sure you don't go in a bad way, and to make sure you're okay, but it does seem like it's coming on strong.
Sorry, I was just about to say, but his reasoning is like, if I want to one day go back to Iran, am I able to fill out a form? I don't know, I'm given a form to apply for a visa. Am I able to write it down? He asked me that, and I was like, well, probably not. That's why I'm stressing you to learn it properly, so you don't have that kind of issue in the future when you get older if you want to go back to Iran. He said there will definitely be an urge for me to want to go back to Iran for a while, maybe, or forever, or just not even go. But being prepared, that's what he says.
So do you think there's a desire from you to go to Iran?
Not right now, currently, because now I'm more focused on getting my education here. Because I've applied for a course in university, and I wanted to finish that, and maybe work here for a while.
Okay.
But I mean, I do want to be able to speak it though. Like, as long as I can, one day maybe teach my children a few things. Why not? It's that kind of thing for me. It's a good thing. Might as well. So at the same time, I'm forcing myself to do it, but it's like that motivation is not there.
No, because it's not coming from you. And to learn a language or keep practicing it every day, so that one day, if you want to fill out a form, you can fill out a form, doesn't seem like a good enough reason. And it's not that it's bad for you to learn the language, but lots of things are good for you. You know, if you learn how to knit, that's not bad for you. But if you said my dad forces me to sit and knit for 30 minutes every day, I wouldn't say that's good, even though learning a skill is not a bad thing. So my concern is more the controlling element of the relationship, and the pushing, and the telling you what to do, and what, how you're supposed to live your life. And then in your relationships, it seems to me, from what you're sharing with me, that he's too involved in your life and controlling and making the decisions, and that's not healthy. And it seems like the arguments you have maybe come from that too, that he's, you're not doing what he wants, but you're not supposed to just do what he wants. You're supposed to live your life, and of course, you might have a certain expectations from you as father son, that can make sense, but not you living your life the way he wants. I would like to continue with you if you'd like. We're at another commercial break. Let's chat a bit more after the break, okay?
Right, no worries.
All right. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's go back to the caller we were with before the break. Caller, are you still there?
Yep. Hello.
Yes. Okay. So, we've covered a few different topics, starting with your relationship, but also now we've your romantic relationship, but now we've gone into the relationship with your father. Let me ask you, if you wanted something to change in your relationship with your father, changes, what would you want to see be different?
I'll be totally honest. I actually don't know how to answer that, because I think I've just gotten so used to not thinking for myself. It's like, well, how do I want it to be? Because I don't want to push my father away.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's like, well, I want him to understand what I mean from my point of view, like that I like this girl. And he's like, but then he said to me, he's like, well, you're still 19, you're not experienced yet. I've seen this kind of stuff. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
what do I do here? You know?
Yeah. Well, what you said was really interesting because you said you want to tell him how you feel, but you don't want to push him away. And I can get
Yeah.
that's how you feel because of how he might come off. But that's the unfortunate thing that you're experiencing, that a lot of people can feel in a relationship, is that either I have to be how you want me to be or say what you want me to say, or I lose you. And I don't think you would lose him from what you're describing, but this again could be related to what we talked about before. Because of your mother going away, you might be more afraid of losing someone. And so you might be more afraid of losing even your father, that, okay, if I tell him what I really feel or think, I lose him. Now, the way you're describing him, it does seem like he comes on pretty strong and might not be the most open to hearing your side of things, or thinks he knows what's best or what's better for you and what's best even maybe for you and him. But nonetheless, I would encourage you to talk to him, or try to be more open with him about what you feel. Not even so much about you and your girlfriend. I mean, that's a big issue that seems to come up a lot, and maybe even fight about it a lot. But just more about you. I'm more thinking about you and his relationship rather than you and her relationship, you know?
Yeah. No, I totally understand. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So what do you think you'd want?
Just go ahead and just.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. It's just I want to say. So, should I just straight up go and just tell him what I've heard pretty much today? You know, in this conversation.
Well, definitely you can. I mean,
set out
sure. Whatever you want to share with him.
He did tell me. He told me that if whatever you say, and it's like, because obviously you know. Whatever you say, and he's like, if it makes sense to me and I believe in it, then come on, tell me, and then we'll talk about it. So he is open about talking. You know, he's not going to be.
That's good.
Closed off.
Yeah, that's good. And I mean, the fact that he asked you to call me, and you know what you just shared there, those are good and hopefully promising signs. And like I said, maybe it seems like, and was his, you know, even we could see there's something of him telling you to call me. There was some kind of controlling, or he was making the decision for you. In this case, I'm very happy for it because I've gotten to talk to you now 2 weeks in a row. But even here, we can see that he's pushing you a bit to make the decisions. But nonetheless, even in having you call me, was it about specifically your relationship? Is that what he wanted you to talk to me about?
It was he pretty much said it doesn't have to be about the relationship. Obviously, you can talk about that, but it's just about myself and you know how I am as a person, trying to like get an image of myself and see myself, you know, like in front of my own eyes, pretty much how I'm behaving, how I am, and then try to learn about that. And to be honest, I was a bit scared to call at first, last week, because I was like, well, you know, what if the doctor says something that's like, you know, really hits me in the spot, and I'm like, I don't, you know, it's a bit hard to hear these things like criticism and stuff. Yeah. But then as soon as I called, it took the weight off my shoulders, and I was like, no, I'm happy I'd made that decision. So good. Well, I'm happy you called too. Yeah. Yeah, actually, I was also surprised when you called last week, and I think you're calling from the UK. I think it was England, Denmark were playing in the semifinal. I don't know if during the Euros. So I was actually surprised you called during that time of last week. But I'm glad you did call last week and today, and that we got to talk. And it's good. He was saying he wants you to kind of understand yourself better, which we've talked a bit about. I think I mentioned it last time, and I'll say it again. In a phone call like this, we can hopefully make some progress or talk about a few things, but I really would recommend that you go to a therapy for a longer time if you really want to understand these things more deeply and get into them and work on them and continue to work on them. So, this can be just like an introduction to some things or overview of some things, but in therapy, you can go much deeper into the issues that he even might be worried about and you might be worried about for yourself. And I generally think it's good for everyone to go to therapy. I myself have gone to therapy for years at different times in my life, and I probably will go again soon because I think it's something good. Not that you just have some problem to fix, but it's about self-awareness and understanding and working on yourself, which I think we always should be doing. Yeah. So I'm glad he had that intention for you, try to understand yourself better, what might be going on. But I think what I would want for him to also hear, as I said, is your relationship with him needs a lot of improvement, it seems. And let me ask you that. Would you agree with that? I think so. I think we need to like just sit down about this and just try to have an eye-to-eye conversation. Yeah. see what I'm saying, and then I'll listen to him, and then rather than one-sided kind of thing.
Is it usually more one-sided?
Obviously, he does more the talking than I do about the things that like I should do and stuff. And I'm not saying it's been bad. It has helped me like tremendously with a lot of things. You know, like just learning how to act. You know, for example, you know, stuff like that. But at the same time, about this relationship, that's the only one that's really got me like a bit nervous about it. It's like, well, you know, I'm liking this. I don't want to break up. But at the same time, if he's right, then I guess I have to. You know.
Well, that's even the way you say you have to. That's a pretty strong, you know, kind of phrasing of it. But and the thing here for me is not even if your dad has good or bad advice. Maybe every piece of advice, let's say he's given you in your life, let's say it's been good. It's less about that and the fact that for you to really have a good relationship with him, it needs to be back and forth. Any kind of relationship, even including a parent-child and especially parent and adult-child relationship, it's not about giving just lectures and giving advice and then you hear it and then you go live your life. You and him need to be able to talk, and even actually for him to help you grow, it's going to be important that you can talk more to express what you're thinking, feeling, and then also for him to let you make decisions. And obviously sometimes they won't work out, but that's how you learn and grow as well. And so it's not that I'm saying, oh, your dad's giving bad advice, you need to make it more balanced. It's that in any relationship, we need it to be balanced where you get to share with him some thoughts. He may be, hey, you know, this is what I'm thinking, but then what do you think? But it does seem like it's much more here. This is, you know, I know the truth. I know better than you, and I'm going to tell you what to do, and you should go do it. And if you don't, you're wrong or bad or, you know, whatever else may be the ways he might put it. But you're making the wrong decision or something like that. That's the part I'm worried about. It's not even, oh, wait, tell me what his advice was. And if it's good enough, then yeah, tell him to keep doing it. It's that I think it's going to be beneficial for your relationship to change even when you were younger, but especially now and as you get older, that it can't just be in this very kind of, you know, I know and I tell you and you listen. It needs to be in a, hey, let's be able to talk about things. And even about, if he wants to talk about your life, he hears you too, not just tells you what to do, you know?
Yeah, no, totally.
But, yeah.
But you do recommend me sitting down and talking and going over these kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, talk with him and, you know, he has to be, what I'm mentioning is it's not just, of course, I'd want you to talk about things like, hey, let's talk about the relationship, let's talk about, you know, specific issues, but I'm also just suggesting something that's even bigger than that and harder than that, which is to change the dynamic of the relationship, which, you know, he would first and foremost have to want to do that, because it's going to be hard even if he wants it. But if he doesn't want it, he thinks, no, it has to be this way. I got to tell my son, you know, I can get it from his side of my fact. No, I'm protecting my son. I don't want him to go down the wrong path or do the wrong things. And if I know better than him, shouldn't I tell him what to do? And so there's some merit to that. I don't want to say it's completely not there and he shouldn't tell you anything, but it's that he's putting, I think, too much of a pressure and not giving you the space to grow and learn and understand what you want to do and to go through life experiences that helps you gain that. Just being told to do the right thing doesn't lead to growth. You know, you're going to have to make your own decisions and even sometimes fall on your face and realize what was wrong and get yourself back up and keep going. So, you know, that's the part that I would hope he recognizes. It's not that if he tells you less, it's because he's loving you less or helping you less. It's he's actually giving you the space to grow. So it's coming from a loving place that he would tell you less what you should do, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
And one other thing was about some kind of course that I could maybe go on, because I've heard there's like a different course, like transcendent behavior courses or just psychology courses that I could possibly do. Do you recommend any or know any names I could possibly write down and search up later on?
I'm not sure what you mean by courses. When you said you know, I've heard of like transcendental meditation. I don't know if that's what you meant.
Right.
That's something different. I mean, meditation in general. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just because I've heard vaguely somewhere that there are different courses that could be done to better yourself and like gain more knowledge about stuff like that. You know, because I know there's like a life coach. I've heard of that thing.
Sure. Yeah, that's and I'm sure there's courses out there. I can't tell you I know a course that I would recommend in that way. Because I mentioned it, meditation, I don't know if that's what you meant. Meditation is good for anyone. It's kind of like a physical exercise, but more in a way for your brain. So I would recommend that if you don't meditate, to look into that. And even within meditation, I don't think there's one school of thought that's the best and you should only do that. There's lots of different forms of meditation, and they all can be helpful. So that's one thing. But when you mentioned like a life coach, that can be helpful too. But to me, if you're considering that type of route where you're meeting with someone one-on-one, I would recommend more going into therapy, where it's more deeply going into your past, understanding yourself better. Life coaches, some of them do some of that, but more it's focused on what you're doing now a lot of times, and behaviors and actions, which can be very helpful. But I think what you're looking for, even what your father was suggesting, but it's also kind of the theme of this conversation, only if you think this is what you want. But if you want to get a deeper understanding of yourself, your issues, how they're affecting you, things that happened in your past affecting you now and in the future, I would recommend going to a therapist for a longer period of time where you really go deep into those issues, because what you experienced in your past with your mother leaving, and then your relationship with your father, we can be pretty clear that these are going to have impacts on you now, and also on the relationships you're going to form, and even the people you choose to be in a relationship with, which is true of everyone. We get affected by our past, but you've had some pretty harsh things to go through with your mother leaving, and it does seem like some aspects of your relationship with your father are pretty negative. He was physically abusive. That to me is toxic and very hurtful and not beneficial at all. And I know you said it's been a few months. Another just clear take home, I hope he would hear this, is that that's never the way to deal with you, and never okay for him to lay a hand on you at all. That's just poison. So if he thinks he's helping anything by doing that, he's not. And that's something I would hope he would stop immediately. It's been a few months, and I hope it never happens again. But if you can tell him that, or if he listens to this again, I hope he hears that message, that is only coming from a bad place, has no benefits in any way. He's saying, my father says this, or other people say this. You're not going to hear one person tell you that hitting your child or hitting anyone is good for them. It's only bad. So if he's saying we should listen to people, then he also needs to listen to them and make sure he's recognizing what he's doing there is not okay at all. You never need to have him lay a hand on you again. And I know you're saying you numb yourself, and I think that's another way you were saying before. You sometimes just kind of accept things so he doesn't go away, or to just keep the relationship, but that's very, very unfair to you. And if he wants to teach you anything about having good relationships with whoever with your current girlfriend or whoever you're going to be with, the best thing he can do is have a healthy and non-toxic or non-abusive relationship with you. So as I said, I would want him to focus more on his relationship with you than your relationship with her, because that's much more in his control and clearly has a lot of room for improvement. And I hope for you and for him that you guys will work towards that.
That's it. Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you very much.
Yes. I'm so glad you called back. Last week we had a kind of shortened time, and I'm glad you called back when we got a little bit more time to go into it. But wish you the best and wish him the best. I'm glad he asked you to call, because I got to talk to you, and wishing you guys nothing but the best.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was great. I appreciate it a lot.
My
Have
pleasure.
A great day.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's go to another commercial break. 310-441-0555. We'll be right back. Welcome back. So got to wrap up a nice conversation with that young gentleman there, and wanted to share some thoughts on some things that came up in the conversation that I think are important, especially when it comes to parenting and parenting relationships with kids, especially adult children, but even in all ages and stages of life. So parents, of course, I always talk about how it's the hardest and biggest responsibility or role that someone can have in their life, and one that obviously should be taken seriously. But of course, because of how difficult it is, we know it's challenging. Lots of mistakes will be made, and you should be trying your best, of course, but knowing that there will always be shortcomings in what you do. And because of that, we should also take it seriously, and that we first look at ourselves and who we are, because our own histories, what we've been through, who we are now, our personality, the way we view things. That's obviously going to have a huge impact in how we are as parents. But also we need to study and learn child development, psychology of child development, different techniques when it comes to from raising your kids to physiologically what they need, all sorts of things. We need to put the time and effort. So we can't just say this is an important role and a big role, but I'm not going to do anything to prepare for it, or just, I should be able to do it. A lot of times people will say things like, well, being a parent, it's a natural thing. There's a natural part of us that's being parent, a paternal drive, a maternal drive. And so, yes, the desire to be a parent can be very natural and innate for people, and they can want it very badly, but it doesn't mean being a good parent is something innate, that you are just naturally good at parenting. There are some drives and pulls, let's say you see a child crying, you're drawn to them to want to take care of them, so it doesn't mean we have no preparation in some way innately to be a parent, but again, it doesn't mean you'll be good at it. Just like the desire to be with someone romantically might be there, to have a partner, to be with someone, but it doesn't mean you're just a good partner right off the bat. So the same things apply of understanding yourself, learning about yourself, and then also learning about relationships and what it takes to be a good partner. That's important. You also want to make sure you do what it takes to be a good parent, which involves learning, evaluating, and continuing to learn and evaluate, because it's not going to be something that once you know, you're done. As you are a parent, you have to keep learning as you go. But another aspect I wanted to focus on is parents. Also, of course, we think, well, I'm teaching my children about life, about how to live. And that's all very true, especially when they're younger. They're looking to you, they're modeling you, whether you want to teach them something or not, they're watching you, and so they're learning from you. So we have to do that, of course, when they're kids, and as they get older, you continue doing that, but we also have to recognize that we have to be aware of our relationship with them, not just being about I have to teach my kid certain things, or what I see very often now is I have to be my child's academic manager, and the thing I'm just worried about is their homework, their classes, the teachers, what classes they take next, what does this mean for their college and all that. Partially, I think it's because in countries like the United States, college admissions has become this crazy process that's way too competitive and way too unhealthy, in the sense that what we're asking kids to be or to become is not even something good. So to be a good candidate for college admissions often means not being a healthy human being, not being well-rounded, not really doing things because you like them or finding that you enjoy them, but just so you check some boxes off to meet the requirements of grades and APs and extracurricular activities and leadership activities and musical instruments, all just to look good on paper to these schools. I think it's very unhealthy, and oftentimes I think it's led to parents feeling this unhealthy pressure that I have to get my kid into a good college because that's all that matters in life and going to make them successful. So that does become the focus. So some of it I think is related to that, but overall parents at times can be more focused on managing their kids and their life in certain ways rather than having a relationship with them. Or I very often work with families where they want to have their teenagers stop doing something, stop smoking weed or using a vape or drinking or doing whatever it might be. And they become focused on that. And sometimes the relationship becomes all about that. Is the kid smoking or not is the only thing that is really involved in the relationship between the parents and the kid. Nothing else really matters. The kid comes home and the parents are checking their eyes or trying to smell or look around or see who are they with, what did they do. Even sometimes they want to do drug tests or different things. And the whole focus becomes on this issue of this one behavior or action. And so what I tell parents a lot of times is that if we really look at it, you can't control your kid's behavior. So if your kid wants to vape, I'm not saying I want them to. I think it's very bad for them. It's not healthy. So I understand your desire for them not to do that. But for you to think you're going to be able to completely control it, it's almost definitely not possible. So you can't stop that from happening. But what you do have in your control, or at least a lot of your control, or you can have an impact on, is your relationship with your child. And so this came up with the previous caller that I was telling him, since he said his father had recommended he call me, was that I would hope his father focuses more on his relationship with his son rather than his son's relationship with his girlfriend that he seemed to not be in favor of. Because, first of all, making that decision for him would not, to me, be the right thing. But on top of that, that's much less in his control than his relationship with his son, which we both agreed clearly could use some work and needed help. So I hope that will happen for them. And so if you're listening to me talking now and you're a parent, you might be thinking, I need to get my son or daughter to do this or to stop doing this, get them motivated, get them to study more, get them to do this more. And you do have impact on those things, but you want to make sure you're definitely not approaching it in a controlling way and realizing that they have to want to do or not do whatever it is that we're talking about. But the other important thing is to realize if you focus so much on controlling some behavior, what you're going to do is you're likely not going to control anything. You're not going to get them or to do something or not get them to do the thing you want them to, whatever it is that they're doing or not doing. But you're going to damage your relationship with them. And that's something I've seen time and time again, that there's no more relationship. It's just this management and this kind of punishment and this kind of cops and robbers or, prisoner type mentality where we're just going to control you, but there's no longer a relationship with your child. And that's your primary responsibility, is to have a relationship that is a full relationship with the kids that you have. Do they talk to you about other things other than school, if that's a thing you're worried about, or other than what they're doing or not doing? What I see happen often is kids might be doing something their parents don't like, or they don't think their parents like it, or their parents give them a hard time, and they get more and more distant. So yes, in the teenage years, your kids are going to talk to you less, but often I see families and work with families where they say, our kid, he or she just goes to their room and doesn't talk to us at all, doesn't tell us anything. And part of that can be because when they tell you something, it's followed by 20 other questions, or it could feel like an interrogation, or can feel like they can say something. It's kind of like what, the Miranda rights they read here in the United States. Anything you say or do can be used against you. So they're afraid to say something because it might be used against them. So if that's the case, you're better off not saying anything at all. So by trying to control your kids, what you're essentially doing is you're squeezing kind of the life out of your relationship with them. I'm going to get them to stop doing this because that's going to make them happy and good. You're not realizing that you're not going to get to control that thing. And on top of that, you're just squeezing them and pushing them away from you rather than helping them. So what is in your control is your relationship with them. Not 100%, because of course, if there's two people in a relationship, they obviously have to play their part as well. But especially when you're a parent, a lot more of it is in your control. You are still, even though I try to encourage things to be less of a power struggle and dynamic, you're still you are the authority figure in that relationship. So you can dictate much more of what's going on. So the relationship is much more in your control. Their behavior is not. And if you focus on trying to get them to do something or not do something, you're just going to damage the relationship without getting this result that you think is going to be helpful for them anyway. And on top of this, we also have to be aware that as they get older, this dynamic more and more has to change away from, I have to tell them what to do or get them to do this or not do this, to letting them make the decisions for themselves. Even from a young age, we want to make sure we're giving them enough agency, enough authority and responsibility in their lives, but especially as they get older. And so you have to ask yourself, it's not just if I know, which first of all, that no, you should doubt yourself more than that. If I know what's right or wrong for them, and if I do, I have to tell them and get them to do it, to actually realizing it's about them going through life and growing and living. If they're in a relationship, rather than saying you have to do this, don't do this, start doing that, not even be with them or date this person or not that person, you need to let them go through the process of meeting someone, dating someone, having the ups and downs in the relationships, because that's how they grow. Growth isn't just about you don't make mistakes or you make what's quote unquote the wrong or the right decision. It's about going through life and experiencing things and learning from those experiences rather than just the choices being right or wrong. So as you're kids get older and get into their teenage years and then get into, being a young adult, you want to be very aware of how much am I telling them what to do, because you're not helping them. If anything, you actually are more likely to be hurting them. And so what I've seen is a crisis in young adults. I work a lot with Iranian families, but in general, where because there's been a lot of controlling and a lot of making the decisions, telling them you don't know what you're doing, I'm going to tell you what to do. When the child and now young adult has to make big decisions about what to study and what type of career to pursue, who to possibly date and marry, they feel very unprepared to face life and to make these decisions. Because they've been told, one, the decisions have been made for them. Two, by the decisions being made for them, you're also implicitly and sometimes even explicitly telling your child you don't know what to do. You're going to make the wrong decision if you make it. I have to make it, or someone else has to make it for you. So now when they're thinking, what should I do? They don't even think to ask themselves, or they're too afraid. Or if they do think something, they think, oh, how do I know this is right? Or I was told so many times what I think is totally wrong, is not the right thing to do. So I don't know. And so, I can ask them, what do you think you want to do, or what do you like? And they can feel very blank and very stuck. I have no idea. I don't know at all. I think partially they maybe are unsure, but I think also they're not used to even hearing that voice within them that might tell them what they should do or what they need to do. So this goes back to one of the aspects of parenting, that you're not just preventing pain, you want to promote growth, which means allowing your child to go through discomforts, letting them, first of all, have the faith, or showing them you have the faith that they can make the decision themselves and that they can deal with the decision's consequences, whether they're good or bad or somewhere in between, and learn from that. But if you just think, okay, my kid can do this or this is better, let me make sure they do that, you're taking away a big aspect of life and of growth, which is choosing, contemplating, making a decision, and then dealing with those consequences. So I hope parents listening will keep this in mind when you're dealing with your kids, that even from a young age, let me make sure it's not just about what's good or bad or what I think is good or bad, but let them make decisions on their own. And as I said it in a very brief way, but also stress here, this concept or idea that I know what's right for them. You really have to question that knowing that you have. You have a feeling, you have a preference, you think you might know, but you have to humbly understand that you don't know what's best for someone in any situation. Parents will tell me all sorts of things. I know this is best for them. I know this is right for them. You have a feeling, I prefer they do this. I don't want to talk too much about the previous caller because he's no longer here, and even the father, who I'll talk about just now quickly, saying learning the language or keeping the language. You have a feeling about that. It can be good, and it's not bad to know a language, but to say, he didn't say this, but let's say I know it's better for them to do this. There's a lot more to it than that. So we have to even recognize I don't know what's necessarily best for them to begin with, and even making the decision for them might not be what's best. So remember that your kid's behavior, and especially your teenage and adult child's behavior, is not in your control, nor should it be in your control. But what is much more in your control is your relationship with your child throughout their life, and realizing that your role as a mother or father is not about controlling and making decisions and managing, but about having a relationship with your child. All right, let's go into our last commercial break. Studio number 310-441-0555. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I wanted to end the show today talking about being judgmental, which it doesn't take a lot of judgment to realize that's not a good thing. But I did want to talk about how difficult it can be to either suspend our judgment, because I'll kind of walk us through this a little bit. When we engage with anything, whether it's a person, an idea, a decision, we have an initial feeling towards it. And when we look at research on decision making, when it comes to moral decision making and other factors, we see that feelings are actually a big part and the first part when it comes to making a decision. So most people, if you ask them why they support a gun law or are against a gun law, pro-abortion, against abortion, whatever it might be, we think it's because of our pure logical reasoning that we've come to some decision, that there's no feelings involved. It's just about logic and reasoning. But Jonathan Haidt did research years ago showing that it's much more about our feelings when it comes to even moral decisions or even, let's say, legislative decisions or political type of decisions. It's much more about feelings that initially make a decision, and the reasoning comes after. So you might think I'm passionate about gun rights or abortion just because of the issue, it's so big, and then now I have feelings, but a lot of it is that the feeling came first and the decision is kind of like we have a lawyer that comes in after the fact to defend us, whatever is the case. A lawyer, if they're defending you, it's not that they're thinking you're not guilty, but they're just going to defend that you're not guilty. And so similarly, our brains in a way are wired in a way that we feel something, and then the logic comes in to explain why we think what we think. So we have a feeling first, and this is why actually making a judgment or suspending a judgment takes effort. We might think if I'm making a judgment, even the way we say it, that takes effort to do that. I'm judging that this is bad or good. I had to make a decision. I had to put effort. But really, it's actually the decision is happening automatically, or that emotional response is happening automatically. If we're going to suspend judgment, it actually takes effort. So this is something that came to me recently. I kind of had recognized it, but not thought of it in this way. And that's why I wanted to share it today, because I think it's kind of puts it on its head or flips the order. We usually think, oh, it takes effort to be judgmental. Just don't judge, right? We even say it that way. Don't judge, don't make a decision. But we have to realize it's the other way around. I already feel something about everything, basically. And so now it's about not putting too much weight into that, because that's the part where people might not recognize they have more control. So the first step is always we have to be aware of the feeling. So to think, no, I don't care about this or I don't think about this probably isn't true and means we're not in touch with what's going on. We always have a feeling to something, and that feeling, if we break it down in a very general way, it's either positive or negative, meaning it's feeling good or feeling bad, going towards the thing or going away from the thing. But then there's also the intensity. So it can be very low intensity or very high intensity. So I might tell you the color brown, and you might not feel that much about it. Maybe you kind of like it, but it's not that strong. Or I might tell you your daughter's name, and you have a strong positive feeling towards that. So it's positive and it's very strong. So when it comes to making a decision or looking at people's behavior or a certain person, we have to first recognize I already have a feeling about it that's just there. And that part of it often is not in our control. You can't really control why you feel that way. And it could be for lots of reasons. You've maybe encountered this thing in the past, someone like that in the past. Even I said name. I can tell you a certain name, and maybe some of it, if you've never met someone with that name, it's about how nice you think it sounds. But if you know someone with that name, you don't like that name because of that. And I've actually seen parents, they're trying to name their kid, and they say, oh, what about the name, Penelope? And then someone says, oh, yeah, I knew this Penelope in college, and I really didn't like her, so no, I don't want that name. So because the name is associated with that person for this person, they don't like that name. And if they're aware of it, they see that's why. It's not, oh, it's too many P's, or it sounds this way, or it sounds that way. No, it's that they dislike someone with that name, and so for them it's associated with that. And so our brains function in this way. They're predicting machines. So when we tell it about something or it encounters something, it has a type of a positive or negative response to it right off the bat without us really controlling that part. But here's where we're not just feeling beings. I'm very big on promoting our feelings because I think, one, they're very important and they're gonna run the show if we're not aware of them. But we have higher order ways of thinking that can then counteract what we just feel. So our feelings don't just make the decision. So when I encourage people to get in touch with their anger, it doesn't mean now that I realize I'm angry at this person, I can do anything to them. I then now have to decide how to deal with this feeling I am now aware of. Okay, I'm angry with my friend. How do I want to deal with this? Do I want to tell them? How do I want to tell them? Do I want to save it for later and tell them? Whatever it is, I have now a decision to make. So when you encounter something, you have a feeling. But if you're aware of it, you can make sure you don't let it turn into a judgment. So you can be aware of, you know what? I already don't like this person because I realize they're from this country where I've had some bad interactions. And so I don't want it to lead to being racist or judgmental in some way. The feeling you can't just change immediately. You can change over time by, for example, let's say, you know what, I have these few negative interactions with people from that country. Let me actually go see the good of that country and the people, because there's good in all people, in all cultures and all backgrounds. So what if I expose myself to the good of that? And if you do over time, that negative association will change, because it won't just be like, oh yeah, those 3 people I interacted with that I didn't have a good relationship with, now I'm seeing, oh, look at this person doing humanitarian work, oh, look at the beautiful music and the art and other things. Getting that exposure over time, not just immediately, and it doesn't mean automatically, can lead to that changing. But first I have to even be aware that the negative feeling is there, and I have to actively go against it. And so when someone shares something with us, so someone says, I want to do this. Now you might want to say, I don't want to judge it, but you initially will have a positive or negative feeling about it. I don't think they should do it, or I think they should do it. Now that's your starting point, but this is where, again, that's automatic. The active part is to suspend judgment. Say, you know what? I feel myself leaning this way. And you might not even tell them this. Some of this is going on in your head. But let me think things through a little bit more. First, maybe I can see why I'm getting pushed that way. Okay, actually, maybe I'm pushed that way because I don't like the thing they want to do, or the last person that told me they did that had a bad experience, so I'm skewed in that direction. Okay, that's where my feeling might be coming from. Now let me think about it a little bit more. So this can be tough for some people to recognize, because they might think I'm not a judgmental person. And there's a difference when we say judgmental in that we're putting people down or really harshly making decisions about them based on certain things. But we have to recognize we're all judgmental in the sense that we all have feelings and reactions to certain things. So that's our starting point. And so when we're actually trying not to be judgmental, what we're saying is that I'm not going to give that much weight to my reactions. So if I just realize I don't like something they're doing, and you might realize this, people that are very judgmental, what they'll do is they'll say, for example, I've heard this recently, okay, tattoos. Oh, people with tattoos are this or that, which is all based on just your own emotional reaction to things. And so rather than saying, oh, you know what, I think I just have a negative view on tattoos or feeling about tattoos because when I was young, my parents used to say lots of things about people with tattoos. I heard that a lot my whole life, that all people with tattoos are this or they're that, or the way it was portrayed in the media. If I think about it, it was always something kind of, maybe a person who is not as good might have a tattoo. So that's where I'm coming from. So we're actually recognizing that that feeling, it doesn't mean everything. We listen to it. We have acceptance that it's there. We want to try to understand it, but we're not going to give it so much weight to say, okay, if I have that feeling, it has to be totally bad. People that are judgmental have that feeling and they say, oh yeah, see, they're such bad people, they're not good. And look, I can show you this example or that example. They hold on and fixate too much on that feeling and try to prove it right so strongly that they'll find a way. And you can always find a way to prove yourself right. We're very, very good at that. And you can find examples to support what you think or believe or feel. And then you'll even more further feel that that's true. So what we want to shift towards is to actively be open-minded. And so again, being judgmental almost comes to us more automatically and naturally and is happening behind the scenes all the time. Suspending judgment or countering that takes some effort. You know what, I'm feeling like I don't like this person, but I want to recognize that could be based on some feelings and things that might not be that important. And here's another area that gets a little bit complicated. I actually value intuition, not in some magical sense that has to be coming from somewhere outside of us, but that our feelings are very good at picking up on things, or we are very good at picking up on things that we might not be aware of. You might walk into a room and you have this negative feeling, and you might realize later, oh, it's because I actually was here once, a while ago, and something bad happened here. So the feeling actually unconsciously knew more than you knew consciously, and over time you were able to become aware of it, that, oh, that's why I didn't like it. And maybe that's something good. Oh yeah, there was someone bad that lives in this area that maybe is still here that hurt me last time. Or you might realize, like, oh yeah, that was because that time I slipped here and fell. It has nothing to do with this place being unsafe. Maybe I'll look at that place where I slipped and not make sure I don't fall again. But this place isn't bad. It was because I fell that I have this bad association with this place. So this is where it does get a little more challenging, that there is some value to paying attention to those feelings as well, which I would encourage you to do. And this is where the discernment becomes important of, why am I feeling this? So always, just even in relationships, but also in something like making decisions, the what is very important. I'm being drawn towards this. I feel this way. But the why is so very important, because that can inform us of what we should do with that feeling, or what type of information it's giving us. Oh, you know what? I'm having this feeling and I'm realizing, oh, that's right. This person actually did this and this and this, and I kind of forgot about it. So I don't know if I should trust them when it comes to doing this with them. Or we might realize the why is, oh, you know what? This person is wearing the same shirt that other person did that I didn't like, and I'm associating that with them. And there's no recipe to know for sure that why. It's an exploration. We don't get 100% answer. Sometimes things resonate more. You're like, you know what? I think this feels right. I kind of understand this to be the case, but we won't always know. So we're faced with this challenge of listening to our feeling because it has value, listening to our feeling because it can tell us something before we really understand what it is consciously. Unconsciously, it's telling us something. So we're conscious of the feeling, but we don't know the why. So we want to pay attention to that part. And there is value in intuition, that it might be telling us something that's very important. This is why I don't like this. This is why I didn't want to do this thing. But we do have to also be aware that sometimes that feeling isn't something good. I've been told people that do this are bad, and so I already assume before I know. Or I had a bad experience with someone with this name, or someone who looks this way. That's why I don't like this person. And also the vice versa. I really like this person. Oh, it turns out it's because they remind me of this other person. It has nothing to necessarily do about them. Or it could be actually they have these good qualities and I should want to be with them. And this is what I mean, that it's a constant type of a exploration that we have to go through in trying to understand, first, what am I feeling? And then why am I feeling this? And then also realizing that our pull and push towards people and things and ideas and decisions is often or always includes an emotional component. And to try to suspend our judgment before we too firmly make a decision takes some action or active necessity or behavior from us. I have to stop myself from too clearly thinking I already know. So this is, again, this challenge. I listen to my feelings, but I don't let them dictate the situation. I listen to my intuition. I try to understand it, but I don't just listen to it 100%. I know some people will say your intuition will never, lead you wrong. I've heard that a lot, and I think there's some wisdom to some of it, but this never. We look for these black and whites because it makes it easier. If my intuition says this, I should do it. But when we look at who people get attracted to in relationships, their intuition is often leading them towards the most unhealthy people because it's reminding them something of their past, something of their parents that's unhealthy, something they wish to resolve. So I try to stay away from making absolutes that your intuition is always right or something is always wrong, because I don't think anything is that simple. Your intuition can definitely have wisdom that you might not consciously be aware of. It can definitely guide you in important ways. It's very important to listen to those inner feelings because they can tell you so much, but they can sometimes lead us astray too. It would be nice to have an easy answer, but it's just not that way. So when we first start trying to make a decision, be aware of that feeling, be aware that being judgmental is actually the automatic as far as making a judgment initially in a snap way. It takes some effort to counteract that, to suspend judgment. Listen to the feelings. First, try to get the what, but make sure you don't stop there. You have to go to the why, because if you just have the what, you might not realize you're getting bad information, really. Information that's not going to help you in this decision. Once you get to the why, that can help you. And then, of course, we use our higher order type of thinking to also look at the pros and cons of what we're going through. And then recognizing at the end of the day, we'll never be 100% about a decision or a judgment. There's almost no way to get to that point. But we get to a point where we feel good about it, or it feels most right to us. We make the decision, we go forward, and we live with the consequences. All right, that brings us to the end of today's show. A big thank you to Ghazaleh here in the studio. You've been listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee. Have a wonderful day.